In today's episode, a story of how my greatest accomplishment has flown completely under the radar. Users always lie. Trouble to remote into user's desktop. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. A story of how my greatest accomplishment has flown completely under the radar. Buckle up. This is a long one. Background. I served in the military for 13 years as a legal specialist and court reporter. All of my IT experience is just me figuring it out using Google and guessing. Got out and immediately was hired for an IT job that they rewrote a little so I could also do cool court reporter stuff with some AI and fancy audio equipment. I've been doing that for 3 years as of last month. This story isn't about the court stuff. That's going swimmingly. FYI, there is some nifty speech-to-text stuff out there. But I digress. We'll start a few years before I got out. I was working in a place with a civilian IT guy. He was supposed to have a supervisor, but that position had been vacant for years. It was a 4-person department, and he was flying solo. He quit and I ended up taking over what was explained to me as his daily job. Basic help desk stuff. Mapping profiles, network permissions, group email account management, phone transfers, etc. Very small potatoes. Again, no new hires, and I did this by myself for an office of about 60 for 2 years. I got out and was asked if I wanted to come back as the new civilian IT guy. The pay was good and I didn't have to move and already knew the staff and assets, so I accepted. They also finally hired the supervisor's position, a guy with a lot of management experience. About 6 months after we started, we got a call from the enterprise-level guys. They were informing us that they were shutting down a system we were supposed to be managing because it hadn't been authorized or recertified in 7 years. It was an aging Lotus Domino server, around 23 databases, each with tens of thousands of records that, by the way, are mandated by Congress to keep for 10 years. It was a homebrew setup, no support or maintenance except for what the every 3-year rotating people had Googled enough to fix some issue. So many busted agents and looping actions, and email notification system rigged to a commercial email rerouter that no one had the login credentials for. The admin in the ACL were long since retired, and here I was with zero clue except someone once said he is good at computer stuff. Luckily, my supervisor knew exactly what was wrong and how to submit the paperwork to fix it. And he thought it would be a good idea to have me do it so I could learn. Great idea. So I slowly got a package together, submitted it, and it failed. Immediately. Expired this. Outdated that. Tons of security flaws in the web interface. Ended up teaching myself what a salted hash was, deleting all 3,000 users' passwords, and creating a temp login reset so anytime someone logged in with a black password field, they had to set a new password. First bullet dodged. Then disaster struck several times. First, some new laws required that we save more data than before, and make it more accessible. The leadership at the time threw together a little group to figure out what to do. We had a broken system, constant server crashes, no support, and new requirements. And no money. So they decided, over my hesitant objection, that this looks like it could be done in SharePoint, and some consult company totally sold them on it. SharePoint was free for us using an enterprise license, and PR0 and Alt-ACC is good at computer stuff. He can figure it out. So the decision was made. Second, the first SharePoint developer we hired rage quit because the PM was too critical. The next dev had some really unique ways to do stuff that we later learned no one else could figure out, and had to be scrapped once we finally got more devs. Then the PM quit. Then the second dev quit. Then the second PM quit. Then my supervisor quit. Got a better offer somewhere else and dipped about halfway through the build of the site collections. So after teaching a half-dozen non-legal people the entire legal process multiple times, several requirements gathering sessions and storyboarding and all that, we finally get the basic site collection built. Now it's time to migrate. Migrating Lotus Notes data into SharePoint lists is a nightmare. Not only did we bust the threshold limits immediately, list column limitations forced us to make 30 separate lists to house the nearly 1,200 data fields plus attachments. The SharePoint host nearly declined our site when we reached out with what we were trying to do. Ended up purchasing some software to make it a little easier and migrating everything mostly successfully. There was one small piece of the Lotus Notes stuff still active on the server. It finally was migrated recently, and now I am free of this burden. But now my problems really started. You see, when the original Domino server was set up, and the notes databases registered in our lifecycle management tool, they were listed under a special type of system so we could get better funding for it. This came back to bite me in the cheeks because those special systems are built to be permanent and have secretariat-level oversight on budgeting and management. So in order to stop having people constantly badgering me, because the system was so out of date it was set to be removed from the network, I had to convince several levels of bureaucracy that the system didn't exist anymore, even though the program name still existed because the old supervisor of mine thought it would be a good idea to name to SharePoint the exact same program name, hence forcing it inherit all of its red tape and security requirements. During this time, Lotus Domino, now IBM Domino, was sold to a company overseas, and the network security folks were adamant that it be shut down immediately. So stuck between the NOSC and a congressional data capture mandate, I did the only thing I could think of, cracked open some old policy documents and started learning how one could decommission one of these special systems. After several weeks of emails and investigation, and a boatload of people wanting to each see for themselves the new SharePoint site, and how it was used, and was there any API or cloud storage or anything extra that kept it in the enterprise definition of a system, two or more hardware/software components used in conjunction, and thus keeping the old rules and red tape in place, today I finally got the final all clear to shut down the old Domino server and recategorize this special project. It's been an exhausting journey, but I learned a lot. I don't think anyone in my office has any idea how close we came to losing the last 10 years of data and what it took to move everything and change the categorization, but I know, and now I can rest easy and get back to what my job description actually is. If you stuck around this long, thanks for reading. Users always lie. I am not a tech person, but I love this sub. I have learned so many simple lessons like make sure everything is actually turned on and check all the cords. So when I attempted to walk my 80-year-old father through fixing his TV over the phone in a snowstorm, I started with all the simple things first. I told him to get the cable remote and the original remote that came with the TV when he bought it. He said he had them. So after 20 minutes, we finally got the cable box on and the TV turned on at the same time. We just needed to change the input on the TV to cable. The whole 20 minutes it took just to get this far, I had been saying to pick up the TV remote and do X, put it down, and use the cable remote to do Y, and he was following my directions pretty well. Finally I told him to find the input button on the TV remote. Dad, there isn't one. Me, do you have the right remote? The one that came with the TV when you originally bought it? Dad, yes, it's the TV remote. Me, okay, starting at the top, read all the names of the buttons. He reads all the buttons starting with on/off all the way to the bottom of the remote. He never reads off input. Okay, I try to Google the TV remote for his TV, because the input button has to be somewhere. But nothing I find for his TV matches the remote he says he has. I even think users always lie and make him read the label on the back of the TV to check that the brand he told me was right. Finally, I start grasping at straws. Me, is there a word written at the very bottom of the TV remote? Dad, yes, I says Spectrum. Me, no, not the cable remote, the TV remote. Dad, this is the TV remote. Me, no, Spectrum is the cable company. Get the other remote for the actual TV. Dad, what do you mean? There isn't one. There is only one remote. Me, what? Dad, yeah, TV and the cable work with the same remote. You know that. Me, I can't help you anymore. How about I come over when the roads are clear in a day or two? Maybe I can fix it in person. Keep your radio on. So yeah. The whole time I was saying pick up the cable remote and do X, put it down, now pick up the TV remote and do Y, he was picking up and putting down the same, single remote control over and over again. 2 days later I drove 45 minutes to his house to push the 2 buttons it took to change the input on the TV. Users always lie. Edit, I literally said get the remote that came with the TV when you bought it. It is in the left-hand drawer of the stand, right under the TV. It has a sticker that says TV on it. He says okay, hang on. When he came back to the phone he said got it. I said so you have both remotes, the cable one and the TV one, and he said yes again. Trouble to remote into user's desktop. Okay, this gonna be a very short story. A little background that I was working in a BPO IT service desk voice account and pretty much support most app and sites in their company computer. For this story we had a special tool, not sure if unique, to easily remote into company computer with admin access/rights. Okay, now for the short story. A user called and having issues with her Outlook on her computer. After some probing seems I need to remote in to see to really understand her issue. So I gave her the address for me to remote in, but seems having trouble accessing the site. At first I gave her the shortcut link, getting can't reach this page, then I gave the full URL of the remote in site, still same issue, then she said she'll try something. So I wait, then after few minute the invite to remote me and came through to me, but something seems different. I was connected and I asked for me to take control, but the mouse keeps moving. So I asked again to please to not use the mouse for now. She answered that she was not touching her mouse at all. Then I finally asked if this is her PC I am connected to. She said no, it's my colleague's. I muted and took a deep breath, and then asked why was I in her colleague's PC. She said she asked him if he could access the site to remote me in, and since he could she continued with the steps to get me in. So I gently explained to her that for me to remote into her computer she need to access the site in her computer, not someone else's. Then she let out a loud and long "ah." Then after a few tries I was able to remote in and fix the issue. Note, at that time I was not familiar with RDP, MSRA, or Quick Assist. Also with the special app to remote in we are able to jump into her computer from our end, but as by our policy that should be our last resort.